Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening we have one of our favorite guests on. We have Dr. Angela Celeste May. We know her as our organizationally, our forensically, and our clinically trained psychologist, but she is a woman of many hats. She is also the president and co-founder of A.M. and Associates Incorporated, the president and founder of Celeste Productions Incorporated. She is the past president of the Michigan Psychological Association Foundation Board. She is also a member of the Metro Detroit Association of Black Psychologists. And y'all, if that's not enough, she is an author and musician and a member of the Trustee of the Michigan Health Council. Welcome, Dr. Angie, to the show. Thank you for being on with us today.
Thank you, Kim. It's wonderful to be here.
I'm so excited. So listen, our topic tonight, because there was a verdict that was reached a while back, and I've been waiting to talk about this with you. So our topic is mass delusion and hysteria in the United States. Okay, so Trump was found guilty of 34 charges. I was like, wow, all 34? It was unanimous. It was 34 charges. He was found guilty. And immediately people were like, it's a sham. It's a lie. It's a big steal. This is the Democratic agenda. The media is lying. Those jurors were put up to it. But then later we hear stories that there were jurors that were offered lots of money if they would find Trump not guilty. I said, oh, salacious, is it not? Then I turned on, I think it was CNN, and Joe Manchin was on. And Joe Manchin said, the American people need to be patient because Donald Trump can be exonerated. And I thought, he can't be exonerated because he was found guilty. Now he can appeal and we can come back and say, that this didn't happen and they can overturn it. Yes, it won't completely exonerate him because now the way things are, once you've been found guilty in the public perception, it is very difficult for you to be found unguilty. And yes, I just said that, unguilty.
Yes.
Not meaning not guilty. But keep in mind, he has several other trials that are going on. We still have the January 6th people that, charged the Congress, the People's House. Many of them are being charged. They are going through their own trials. They're being found guilty, being placed in jail. We've heard all kinds of people saying, my family members in jail and they didn't belong there. And you've had other people who, if it was because there was one, it was a girl, I remember. She turned in her father because she said he did wrong. And I say all that because Donald Trump has consistently said those were patriots. Those were good people. Just like in Charlotte, when they had that rally with the white supremacists and the young white woman was killed because someone ran her over with a car, and he said they were good people on both sides. Dr. Angie, that sounds like delusion to me. This sounds like mass hysteria, like a sci. And I love my sci-fi and my horror movies. Yeah. And I was trying to think of a movie beyond Body Snatchers that was sort of exemplify that metaphor. But we are a nation that many of us believe that the things that we saw live January 6th, that it didn't happen, that the last election, it was stolen, that President Joe Biden is not the president. Donald Trump is running things. I've heard that. I've heard all kinds of different stories, and I'm just like, what has happened to our country? So my question to you, what does it say about us as a country? And then think about what are the psychological components of what that says about us. And I'll start there.
Okay. It's a good start. Good rich start. What does it say about us as a country? I think it says a few things about us as a country. one of the things that I had discussions with people, talk about husband and different folks, and we talk about how, and in some ways there's nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that not for every single person who's caught up in this delusion and following Trump and the whole MAGA movement and all that, but we do know that for many of them, there's an undercurrent of the white racism against
Mm-hmm.
Black and brown people, particularly Black folks.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say there's nothing new under the sun in one way, because we've never finished, or really, well, we began, but we never finished reckoning with our racism. It's hard to say our racist past, but it's not just our racist past. We have not really fully finished reckoning with our racist past, our racist present, and the attempts to make sure that there's a racist future in this country. So in that sense, there's nothing new under the sun. And the ascension of Trump coming into this political arena, we know that he's been around for years as a public figure and in other ways, but this ascension, I don't know if I say ascension, but this transition into the public life, we'll put it that way, has really, as other people have said, it's really given permission. He's created permission structure because of sitting in such a powerful seat. Many say the most powerful seat, in the world, because of where our country is in terms of financial and militaristic and all those other aspects of power that we hold. So because of where he sat when he was number 45, notice that we still,
Yes.
for those of you who aren't familiar, many of us who did not support him as president did not refer to him as the president, and that was quite a few people, particularly Black folks, but quite a few who just referred to him as the number in terms of which president he was. He was our 45th president, number 45. So because he was in that position, because he held and holds a lot of racist ideas that, he may not be aware that they're racist ideas, and some things he may be aware of, but because he holds those ideas, he spoke them out loud. Like you said, he said there were good people on both sides, when one of those sides at that time that he was speaking about was fueled by KKK, Ku Klux Klan, other racist hate groups. And so because he would say those things out loud, because he would say and do things that were racist, it gave many of the racists in our country permission to stop tamping down their feelings and their public displays of racism and discrimination, because discrimination is the actual behavior, based on prejudice, etc. So in that way, that kind of awakened a lot, and I would say awakened, gave permission to, and just really, as people have said, normalized, kind of normalized something that we've spent a lot of the last century, the 20th century, fighting against, and that is open racism against Black and brown folks, etc. So there's that part of it. As far as what it says about our country, it shows how much we have grown a lot in a lot of ways, and then there are a lot of ways in which, particularly around racism, that we're stuck. We're still stuck. We're still dormant when it comes to that. Our country as a whole, as you know, has never done a formal apology, never offered a formal apology for enslaving Black people, whereas we have offered formal apologies, meaning it's coming from the federal government to our Japanese Americans who were wrongly put in camps during World War II, and to other groups, but never to the descendants and of African Americans who were enslaved. So there's that whole part of it, of what it says about our country and where we are. It also says a lot about the desperate need to have, in some ways, like quick answers, for something. So Trump and Trumpism and this whole MAGA movement, and this, like you were saying, the way we've gotten to the point where we just can't have a civil conversation with people who are from different political walks of life. it says about our country that there's been such a desperation for answers. And by answers, I mean, if I'm having a hard time financially, the wheels of justice, legislature, passing laws that might help my family, they may do, they may, and they do make a difference, but it takes time. The legislative process in our country, and in most countries, it takes time. Sometimes it takes longer than it should, but it does require voting. It requires agreement. It requires drafting the law. It requires all of that. And so for a lot of people, I would say another thing it says about our country is that too many people have fallen easy prey to what looks like an easy answer. And the easy answers are plural, blame the other folks. It's all your fault that I'm going through this. This whole MAGA movement and where we are right now in our country politically, those who are blamed or scapegoated, which is not new in history, are oftentimes Black folks and oftentimes people in power. And so, getting to like what you were saying about not trusting our institutions, to a certain degree, that's been around. That's not new. I've had students in my classes I've taught, psychologists, et cetera, for whom I've heard, those statements. You can't trust any of them. And often the way I deal with that with people in general is I'll start asking a few questions, and I'll ask questions specifically using the names of well-known or famous, highly respected people in politics. I will raise them. Well, what about? So what you're saying is that the great John Lewis, who put his life on the line for me and you to be able to vote and have our rights. So you're saying you can't trust him? Oh, well, no, I don't mean him. And I'll name a couple of others, and it does the trick usually. Where the trick meaning it holds a mirror up to them, and they begin to realize, okay, well, maybe I exaggerated when I say you can't trust any of them. However, and when I approach it in those ways, what I have found is that helps to chip away at the defensiveness and gives a better opportunity for a conversation. We might still disagree about some things, but I find that approaching them with information that they've already accepted. I think that's one of the keys. Information that they've already accepted. If I just give them just some facts from the Wall Street Journal or wherever, sometimes that will work. But like you said, for those in our country who increasingly are putting their head in the sand and they just don't want to hear facts, and I refuse to listen. It may not work as well. Sometimes it does. Oftentimes it doesn't. So I find with those folks, starting with couple things, starting with information that they've already accepted, no matter what aisle that you stand on, that we still have some people that people hold in high esteem and respect. Like, not in terms of our country, of course, but as an example, Nelson Mandela, no matter what side, just about most people around the world, Martin Luther King, in our country, John Lewis, and some others. So starting with information that we are finding that people always say, how do you find that middle ground? It's there, but you have to kind of know who you're talking to and start there if you can find those spaces. And the other thing is giving them love and respect. That's the other thing. Because oftentimes, you were talking about the psychology of it. People expect you to argue back because that's a natural human reaction. If I punch you, you're either gonna, duck, or you're gonna punch back, or you might run. So psychologically speaking, we could think in terms of one aspect, which is the fight or flight response. And people may have heard of that. The fight or flight response, it's really it's a term that refers to the natural part of our nervous system, where we are just naturally wired as humans to react to and deal with a lot of stimulation coming at us, and particularly threats, things that we perceive as threatening. We're kind of like pre-wired as humans to respond in a couple of ways for the purpose of survival. And that's what is termed the fight or flight response. So the fight or flight response is exactly what it sounds like. If we perceive a threat or a bear coming at us, for example, just kind of walking towards us or running towards us, we will either instinctively try to get her for survival, or if you feel that there's no place to run, you'll try to fight that, you know. So I would say taking that psychological principle and applying it to this whole political realm, and the fact that people have a hard time talking to each other if they're from Republican or Democratic leaning parties. It's a similar kind of thing where on both sides, a lot of times there's clashing because people feel they're being attacked. And so their knee-jerk automatic response is to attack back. And before you know it, you're just in a loop of fighting, you know, fussing and fighting, arguing back and forth, and no one is listening because everybody's trying to preserve what they feel is their identity. Oh, you're trying to put me down. You know, if you disagree with me, you're trying to put me down. And it's going to escalate and people can't hear each other.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's a great segue to our next question. So, you know, there are so many people, like you said, they laser focus in on their own belief system, their own thoughts, their own experiences. They're not considering anybody else. Without critical thinking skills, Dr. Angie, what is that doing to us mentally as a nation?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you asked that question. That is so important. Thank you. That is definitely, I was just writing this to somebody recently. I sent an email or text or something. I was, dealing with this very question that I've been quite concerned about. Not that I'm the only one, but I've been, as like coming from the psychology, I've been very concerned about that very question, the damage that this is doing, to our brains and our just our survival as a species. You're exactly right. That's an excellent question. In order to insist and to continue insisting that you can't trust your own eyes because someone else told you not to, without any proof or facts. If you continue to insist that all these truths are not provable facts, are false, it does do a lot of damage. For one thing, the reason that we teach critical thinking in college, in high school, the reason that you are actually at all levels, it's really taught at all levels in different ways. The reason we teach in the first place is because critical thinking is directly related to brain development. And so we now, as a profession, we realize that whereas in the past, folks thought that we were finished developing by age 18 or we were finished developing by age 21, we now know that our brains are still finishing developing even into the mid-20s, even at age 25 for some. So it negatively impacts, and it's like stunting the growth of the brain's ability to continue developing, because it's like any muscle, you're not exercising. Critical thinking is an activity in which you engage in using your brain cells, your gray matter, as we say, to figure things out, to problem solve, to investigate and research, come up with your own answers, find out if this makes sense to you, why or why not it makes sense. All of those steps, all of those aspects of critical thinking, yes, they impact us as we develop. And after we're fully developed into the rest of our lives, into our 30s, 40s, 50s, into our 90s, all of that, critical thinking is very, very important, because we now know that as you learn a new skill, as you learn new information, as you learn to do a new activity, you're literally creating new neural pathways in your brain. Yeah. And so our brains, like we say, we're lifelong learners. We're continuing to learn and develop and grow and figure things out and learn new skills. All of that requires is that all those are aspects of critical thinking. When I don't believe in calling anyone dumb, but so I'll use this as maybe, I don't know, is it a verb? When you dumb down the process rather than elevate that process, in process meaning your brain processes, you're stunting your opportunity for continued growth. So just kind of like following blindly anybody, you may want to follow them, you may think that they're amazing, fantastic, but just because you want to follow them, it's not an either or. Just because you want to follow them, it doesn't automatically mean that you can't think for yourself. And that is how you create mental slaves. You enslave people mentally by chipping away at and working hard to convince them that their own ability to critically think and look into things for themselves should be dormant. Don't trust your own mind. Don't trust your own brain. So it's in effect, it's creating damage. It's in effect like shutting down your brain's ability. Your brain will still have the ability to work, but it'll be less sharp because you're not using it. You're not practicing. You just, well, just whatever you tell me. And it is very dangerous because we see these interviewers who go out and talk to for example, Trump supporters, the diehard people, and they have to trick themselves, lie. If you lie long enough, as they say, you can start to believe.
Yeah.
It may not be a delusion to begin with. A delusion is a false belief that's based on nothing that can show and for people who say, well, I'm not highly spiritual, or I don't believe in God, or I have some questions about whether there's a God. So for all of you people who are having your faith in your God and everything, I consider that delusional. Well, one of the things, for like you and I and so many people who have a background of faith, raised that way, one of the things that we're taught is, and it's in our scripture that, our scripture, we're actually encouraged to ask some questions because God has the answers.
Right.
We're taught to let our experiences show us what God will do. So it's not all just blindly, over time, if you've shown for your own experiences that your faith has seen you through, and that there have been positive outcomes as a result of your interaction with the God that you serve. So even that's not just all blind. So following just completely blindly with no answers ever, other than what the person gives you, and you refuse to use your brain to figure out for yourself or get some answers beyond just what the one person tells you, that is an act of enslaving your own brain. And very, very, very damaging. Absolutely. Because then you will slowly begin to lose the ability to recognize what is good for you. You will begin to stop advocating for yourself. You will begin to just give yourself completely over to another human being who is fallible, who is not perfect. And that does a great deal of damage. Absolutely.
And, that is a great point, because as we continue on in life, we go to jobs. There are people with different belief systems, and different people understand, for example, when we talk about diversity, ooh, that is a hot topic. And people will say, oh, you're trying to make me feel bad. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. You feel bad because you feel bad. Diversity, for me, this is my opinion, Kimberly Baxter Davis, what I see, diversity is a celebration of differences. It's honoring the differences among us, whether it's Black, Latino, Hispanic, Chaldean, Arabic, African, whatever it is, LGBTQIA+. Diversity could be women. What does it look like to be in a diverse population of women? It's not just traditional white women's experiences. It's everybody's experience around the spectrum. We are now listening to everyone, understanding, and then trying to figure out how we can pull everybody together to meet whatever the needs are. And so many times, and I see, and I work in higher education, and oftentimes we have these very contentious conversations around diversity, and it's always interesting to me. And I always struggle with, in my interactions, how do I use my critical thinking in a way that strengthens me so that I'm not struggling mentally, because so many of these conversations that I hear and so many of these situations that we see, it almost to me seems as if a lot of these people are having a mental breakdown. And I know, this could be simplifying it. But a lot of times when I see these videos of these women going crazy because some Black person did something and they're like, you don't live here, or this is my car and it's not their car. It actually belongs to the Black person, but they're upset because they want it to be their car. Or in the case of, I was watching a video on either Instagram or TikTok, and there was a guy who was swimming in a pool, and these two white people came down and they were like, you have to get out of that pool. And they were like, why are you yelling at him? It's past time for him to be swimming. And they said, and the person who I guess was recording or in the background said, let him do his thing. Leave him alone. He not bothering anybody. We all sitting here, we're fine. And it's almost as if they are looking to cause a disturbance to justify whatever opinions, behavior, attitudes that they already had. So I guess my question to you, Dr. Angie, is how do we guard ourselves mentally? How do we use our critical thinking skills where we can civilly coexist with everyone? Because no one is supposed to have the same belief. No one is supposed to think the same thing. We're all supposed to ask questions, and try to find our pathway. And no one's pathway is the same. Everybody's path is different. And I think that's something that we've forgotten.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the best starting places for trying to create more civil interactions where, like you said, people can kind of coexist. Because we're humans, I don't think we'll ever just all coexist beautifully
Right.
at all times, of course. But certainly we don't want it to look like, unfortunately, our own country is looking, and has been for a while now with all this division. I think a good place to start with our critical thinking is, it's like I mentioned earlier, coming from a place of trying to, when I was talking about that middle ground, as people would say, I think of it, like I was saying earlier, in terms of trying to present something that I can suspect or deduce that they probably already agree with, like kind of start there. And that can look different ways. So I think one place to start is not always easy because the situation is not easy, but one place to start is to really try to, with our critical thinking, try to get a better understanding of where some of these folks are coming from. They're not all of the exact same mind, but to your point, as you were saying, many of these folks are coming from the exact same or they do have a similar idea in their head, right? So, and I engage in this all the time. Well, let me say, okay. So, it's that step in their shoes kind of thing. Doesn't mean that, you have to, this does not mean condone their behavior, whatever. But when I try to look at it from their eyes, I see people don't just fall out the sky entitled.
Yes.
They don't just fall out the womb entitled. This stuff is entrenched and ingrained for generations upon generations. And it is taught overtly. It's taught by body language. It's taught by family traditions. It's taught by the racist ways in which our history books have been written because of who was writing them. It's taught in our paintings. It's taught, you can just go down the list, every aspect of life. What has been taught? If you're white, you're right. If you're tan, what is it? Wait, how does it go? I can't remember the saying. But I know if you're black, you gotta get back. That's the old saying that you say back in the day. If you're brown, you can stick around.
Yeah.
So there is it's taught. And it has been played out in every aspect of our lives. And going back to what I said initially, the very first I began this conversation, so much of what you described and that what you're saying, what we're all seeing, it's not that it's new, but there's a permission structure now to just unleash it because, you know, he did it. We saw a powerful public figure do it, and that one did it. So if I think in terms, critically thinking, if I think in terms of trying to understand, okay, let me investigate this. With critical thinking, like, let me look closer. Where is this coming from? What is it based on? What's the history behind it? Now, you do not have to write a whole term paper. You don't have to do a whole research paper on it, unless you just want to. But when I understand that first of all, you can't really be angry at me because you don't know me. So, okay, this is the critical thinking. So, as an example, so then what are you angry at? You're angry because you believe you were taught and you probably saw or whatever. And those who raised you, remember, we don't want to call our parents and grandparents liars.
Right.
Well, so we need to preserve and maintain. We want to feel like that, you know, that we love them, and they wouldn't lie to me. They wouldn't just tell me something wasn't true. So I feel even more of an impetus to preserve these prejudices. And keep in mind, prejudice and discrimination, prejudicial thinking and discrimination, they're traditions. They're psychologically unhealthy and very much based on delusion. But they are, and I say that because there's no evidence. There's evidence to the contrary, actually, that people from all different backgrounds are brilliant and talented and all that. So your background, your ethnicity, your skin, none of that says you're better or worse. So it is a bit delusional, and more than a bit delusional thinking to think that is that describes the content of your character. But if you were taught that you're supposed to be over me and better than me, and you feel that you are not, or you're discovering that you're not, or you feel that I'm in the way, I'm in the place where you're supposed to be. I'm driving the car you're supposed to, because you have a beat up car and I have a brand new car. But that's not right, because that's not what I was taught. And that's not what I was told. So if I look at that in terms of critical thinking, I'm understanding why. It helps me to understand. That's not even the whole story, but that's a big part of why this person who is yelling at me feels threatened by me. You don't know me, but you were taught a whole bunch of racist nonsense about people who look like me, or Black folks, my fellow Black folks. So you feel threatened. You feel that your identity is being threatened. And by identity, I mean the hierarchical mentality of racism in our country, as in other countries, many countries, is that you just can't have two folks occupying the same space. So men are supposed to be on top, because you've seen this with women too. Some of the vitriol against Hillary Clinton, as an example,
came from women,
because it came from women, exactly. And that's absolutely true. And came because how dare you step into the position of what is supposed to be, I put that in quotes, in our hierarchical system, men first, our patriarchal system, men on top, women are supposed to be second. Many, many people in our country do not believe that. We have fought against that. That's the absolute truth. Men and women have fought against that. But for those who have those same kinds of vitriolistic reactions, it's that identity thing where you're threatening my identity. So I would say start with using our critical thinking skills to try to understand. And like I say, I'll repeat again, I'm trying to understand. It doesn't mean you condone it or embrace it. But if you could understand it, then you can have a better idea of how to address it. So if I understand that you're feeling threatened by me, then that might give me some clues as to, how to go about dealing with this. So it all depends on the situation. If it's the situation like you described, where someone's in the pool and they're being yelled at and there's like nobody to like help defend them, etc. Now, for survival's sake, if it's one person in the pool, nobody else around, there's two people yelling at you, just to make sure you're safe, you might just get out the pool and leave at that time. However, that doesn't have to be the end of it, because a lot of people feel like, well, if I do that, then I'm giving in, but you could be putting yourself in harm's way.
Right.
So in terms of critical thinking, investigating, problem solving, researching, okay, what can I do to fight this, even if I don't address it in the moment? Perhaps you need to get out of that pool if you're the only one there. There's nobody else who has your back. and there's more than one person yelling at you, get out, get gone, be free, and be safe. Then after the fact, you can find out who, if you don't already know, who owns the pool, who's running the pool, who's the manager. You can utilize the legal system. You can go by steps to, you know, contact them, let them know what happened, let them know in a very respectful way that you may be suing them, or, you know, you have to go all the way to there yet, but that's one of the tools you have. And oftentimes, if it's written in a certain kind of very professional way to say this is what happened, I'm bringing a complaint. There have been places that have been shut down because of that. There have been residents, if it's at a residence, there have been residents who have literally lost their apartments because they were racistly attacking another resident, and the management said, we're not going to stand for it. So there are lots of, critically thinking, there are lots of ways to fight these battles in a way that'll keep you safe. As far as the interactions, sometimes you can deal with it in the moment. Sometimes it's better to wait and talk about it at a later time if things are too heated. So an example of that would be, again, if somebody's screaming and yelling at you, and they're, you know, they're just not hearing you. Again, particularly if you're outnumbered. This is the thing. But if it's one-on-one, or if it's a couple of you and a couple of them, whatever, critically thinking, you can think in terms of reaching out. It can take some personal wherewithal to do this, but I have done this, and so has my husband, lots of times in conversations with people who are expecting a fight. So if you don't engage in that fight with them, and you maintain calm, and they may still be going off, you know, but you maintain calm, present your facts. And this is something else that could be that can help, asking questions. Don't automatically go to defending. Ask questions. That can be helpful too. Well, what's concerning you? What is bothering? Oh, I just don't think you should be here. You know, I can understand that you're upset, obviously, that I'm here. Can you tell me what's upsetting you? Just that alone can take people aback. Like, wait, what, you know, what are you asking me?
Right.
You know, so engaging with people in a respectful and loving manner while maintaining your own sense of respect. Because some people will hear me say loving manner and they think I mean bowing down, kowtow. I don't mean any of that. Always respect yourself. Don't let anyone disrespect you, but you have a right to ask questions calmly. What is your concern? Why do you feel that I am doing such and such? I'm just standing here taking pictures of birds. What do you feel that I'm doing? And then just wait. That can take some discipline, to wait. What do you feel that I'm doing? A lot of times they will stammer because it's not based on thinking. And they haven't thought that through.
And you take them off guard because you didn't react the way they wanted you to react. You didn't give them the same energy back. Sometimes you, as I tell people, sometimes you have to match energy, and sometimes you have to know to just take a step back and just let people perform and just let them embarrass themselves.
Exactly. And that is so key, what you just said. Exactly what you said it. You've got to know, the key part of what you said is knowing when. You've got to know when. And that takes a couple of things. That takes critical thinking, but it also takes emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, I'm sorry, I'm shaking my I can't, sorry. Emotional intelligence goes hand in hand with critical thinking and can really take you a long way, just like you were just saying. Emotional intelligence means understanding, you know, like I said, kind of like where they're coming from. Even if it doesn't make any sense to you, if you have good emotional intelligence, you can at least gauge, exactly like you said, whether or not emotionally they might be receptive, you know, to a couple of questions, to kind of, like you said, don't match the energy and see if that will kind of bring their anger down where they'll listen a little bit. Or you can use your emotional intelligence to gauge that, you know, like you said, match energy with energy, or now it's not the time, or whatever. But some people sort of naturally have more emotional intelligence than other people. They just come by it naturally, where they're good at reading people, their body language, where they're. Other people, you have to work on it. Some people but we can all develop those skills and sharpen them. But that's really important what you said, hand in hand with critical thinking. There are some people who will just be railing. And if you have good emotional intelligence, and if you're able to step back, it's not always easy, because it's like, oh my goodness, they're coming at me. Your own fight or flight response will sure. but sometimes you can see in their eyes, they really are hurt. Like they really are upset. And some, like you said, you got to know when. Sometimes you can kind of engage a little bit and de-escalate that. At other times, you might need to match that energy with that energy. I doesn't happen often. I mean, I have a big mouth, but it doesn't happen often. I had a yelling match yesterday with with someone, just a distant relative, and she ain't following Trump by any means, but she is kind of following what some people are putting out there, particularly to try to persuade Black folks a little bit.
Yes.
Now, everyone has a right to vote as they want, of course, but she was, trying to equate Donald Trump and President Biden as if she couldn't see the difference. Well, they're just both bad, and I've heard people say it too. But
yep.
No one's perfect, but I matched her energy, and I really yelled at her. But what I was yelling, the reason it de-escalated her is because A, I was yelling facts, and B, I was literally yelling love. I was saying, because I care about you, when you say that, I'm concerned because, obviously you are not paying attention to, and then I rattled off some like facts and statistics about the differences between the two, and she knew that they're provable, about some specific things that President Biden does and some specific things that Donald Trump does and who's his. So I could, with her, I could kind of read that situation. It could de-escalate a bit. And she was listening a little bit better.
Okay,
and
good.
There's some folks you can do that with. And some folks you can't.
Yep. Very true. Very true. It is.
Yeah. And you can save your own blood pressure.
Yes.
Developing that emotional intelligence, that critical thinking of knowing when you can, when you can't. Other thing I'll say too is, as frustrating as it can be, and it can be frustrating, everyone who doesn't respond the way we want to in the moment, in that conversation, that doesn't always mean that you're not making a difference. That doesn't always mean you're not thinking about that they won't think about what you said later. It may have an impact. So like they say, if you see something, say something. If you feel that you should, and don't feel defeated, because the truth is undeniable and it cannot be defeated, no matter how many lies are put out by certain plural individuals in our country.
Absolutely. That is a great way to end our show, Dr. Angie. Before we get out of here, and thank you for that, because you always bring, a perspective to us that helps us to critically think and, understand why things are the way they are. But before we get out of here, tell us how we can find you and how we can follow you on social media and all the things that you have coming up.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Well, I can be found, I do, like she said, many different things, but a couple of the main things I'm doing on the psychology side and the music side, you can find me on the social media, so Instagram and Facebook, excuse me, also LinkedIn. I am Dr. Angela Celeste May, CELESTE MAY, just like the month, I always say. You can find me on my Facebook. Like I said, there's Angela May, which is my general Facebook. Come in and hang out. Then there's also Dr. Angela Celeste May, and that's my music Facebook page. You can also find me on Instagram, Angela Celeste May. I just use my name everywhere, same name. I'm a little bit on former Twitter X, a little bit here and there. My company that I have with my sister, which is A.M. May and Associates Incorporated, where we do counseling, consulting, and coaching. My sister is Michelle Ann May. She's the M in A.M. May. You can find us also on our Instagram page at ammayassociates.com and on our Facebook page as well. And you can go to our website at ammayassociates.com as well. That's our website, and see what we have coming up. Right now, the main focus is an in-person retreat in the fall for creatives, coaching retreat for creative professionals that my sister will be running. So that's coming up, very exciting. The registration period for that is about to close, but that's what's coming up in the fall. let's see what else. For me, sticking with the psychology side, for AMA, I have a consulting contract because we do consulting as well, in which I will be training parents who have little ones. So that's going to be coming up. Yes, I'm looking forward to that. So we're working with parents and other people who are caring for little ones up to age 3. So that means daycare workers as well.
Okay.
And really teaching them along with a kit, with tools, et cetera, and really teaching them about helping the little ones meet and exceed their milestones in terms of the development, why we don't want to sit them in front of a screen and let the TV screen or whatever be the babysitter, why it's important, and explaining and demonstrating about the interaction and how interacting with your child helps with brain development, body development, all of that. So I have that contract coming up. I'm very excited about that. I'm doing in the Metro Detroit area with working with different groups. Let's see what else. There's always stuff going on. If you look at my Facebook page and Instagram, anything I'm doing with my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, we're always out there helping the community. So you can, find me what I'm doing there. And the same thing with the drug-free youth in Detroit advisory board. I'm on that. So we're out in the community doing different things. So you can find that stuff out on my socials. On the music side, I've got some performances coming up in the fall. I took a little sabbatical, so I'm back. So that's coming up in the fall. Again, go to my Facebook page. I am co-hosting an event that is coming up as well. I won't be performing at it, but co-hosting. In terms of music, if you want to book me for performance or for teaching, because I teach voice and I teach piano at a studio here in Metro Detroit, you can email me at CELESTEMUS, which is short for music, and the number 1 at AOL.com. So that's most of the stuff right now. There's some other stuff that I'll be talking about later as they develop, but that's what's going on.
Did you talk about your book?
Oh my goodness, my book. I apologize. Thank you for asking. I have moved recently. My husband and I have moved. And so all the boxes are not unpacked yet, although we've got books on our shelves. So all the boxes aren't unpacked. And I started to say, I don't have my book in front of me. I do have my book. I forgot. I unpacked and put it on a bookshelf and forgot to bring it here with me. But thank you for asking for my book. It's called Freedom. What is the experience of living without negative self-imposed limitations? And it's an excellent book. You can find it on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com. Just type in that long title or my name, Dr. Angela Celeste May, and get yourself a copy. It's wonderful research that I was privileged to engage in, and with people from all different walks of life telling their stories about how they went from being stuck at some point in their lives to being free from that. So that meant stuck in their relationship or in their career or just personal development. And out of that research came 7 key themes that are in many ways universal that we all can learn from. So that is my book. Thank you for asking about that.
Excellent.
And Reverb Nation as well, and iTunes. You can find my music for my first 2 albums. I'm doing some writing again, and hope to be doing some recording later on and all that stuff later on down the line. So, but for the first 2 albums, you can go to reverbnation.com/Angela Celeste May or iTunes as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Angie, for being here. We can't wait to talk to you next month. We know you'll have another exciting and educational topic to stretch our minds, to help us to grow in our critical thinking. I love that.
Yes, absolutely. I look forward to it. Thank you, as always.
Awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in. You can see this show at youtube.com/Kimberly Batchelor Davis. I had a brain fart for a moment. You can hear this show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, and Wisdom. You can find me everywhere on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is X, LinkedIn, Snapchat, TikTok, everywhere as Kimberly Batchelor Davis. Bachelor is spelled BATCHELOR. To learn more about me as an author, you can visit kimbdavis.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you'll join us for our next episode. And as always, remember, be magnificent.